My dear friends, this is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our discussions and our discoveries with respect to the films that can be found contained within this wonderful set, which is under the title of Pioneers of African American Cinema. This happens to be the 5-disc Blu-ray set that was released by Kino Classics some years back. And we are now at one of the works that can be found on the 5th of such Blu-ray discs. And this is a work from 1941. And it stars Cathryn, Caviness, and Spencer Williams. And it is a work which is written and directed by Spencer Williams. It is the towering achievement in many respects, which is called The Blood of Jesus. The Blood of Jesus could be described as being a story about this particular couple, played by Cathryn Caviness and Spencer Williams, respectively. Martha Ann Jackson and Razz Jackson, Sister Martha Ann. And she is seen to be very religious, very devout, and he perhaps not so much. And they are a couple, and throughout the film, due to certain circumstances, there is a tragic and accidental set of circumstances that leads the Sister Martha Ann character to a particular series or episodes or situations wherein we see her being tempted. She is confronted by a sense of temptation, and this temptation leads to certain choices that she seems to need to make or have to confront or have to decide upon that are very much dependent upon her own devout nature, her own sense of belief and faith and religion, and in particular how that sense of faith is so important for her, thus to help her make or guide her towards the particular decisions that we see her face, again, in the context of her own faith and belief. And this is, I think, a really nice comparison and contrast to the Razz Jackson character, the Spencer Williams, and how he seems to be also, as I say, not so devout, but due to certain circumstances, we see him also trying to struggle, or not trying to, struggling with the various circumstances that befall these particular characters due, as I say, to certain tragic accidental circumstances, and how he tries to deal with them. And so they have this, of course, very close connection, these two characters. And through this exploration of faith and belief, and the idea of the power of such faith comes to the fore. Not just the power of the faith as is expressed in cinematic terms, but also how that affects and ultimately helps and guides along and ultimately leads to a type of fruitful or beneficial state of emotional bliss or togetherness or companionship. And so this idea of faith leading to these solutions and conclusions that can be said to be very much beneficial and healthy in terms of emotional, satisfying human relationships, and again, in the context of the relationship of these two characters. And so overall, we have, I think, a film that is very much about human behavior, about relationships. It's also, as I say, about belief and faith and temptation and salvation. It's all within this wonderfully rendered cinematic marvel that is Spencer Williams' work, The Blood of Jesus. So in that context, I think this film is, as I say, a towering achievement in many respects, on many levels. I think one such level is its place in terms of what Jacqueline Njuma Stewart and Charles Musser and others refer to as race cinema, After all, it is a film that can be found in the set called Pioneers of African American Cinema. It is made by this very prominent figure in terms of acting and also directing. That is Spencer Williams. And so we have this aspect and also the storyline itself through what can be described as a type of, of story whose context has certain depictions of religion and religious communities, etc. Again, the context being the story between these two characters, and specifically, but again, we get this context of religious communities and such, and spirituals and the like, and the community writ large. I think we can see this film through what can be described as an maybe in terms of an ethnographic lens and perspective, as it were. So in that sense, this is a very important work in that regard. But I think also what should be stressed is something that I think Jacqueline Juma Stewart makes a really strong point about in her essay, which can be found in the booklet that is included in this particular set. And she says, or she asserts, I think very, very convincingly, about how that is one of many levels, I think, through which, upon which one can view and appreciate and enjoy this incredible work. Another such level that she suggests in her essay is, for example, how this film has this real technical craft about it. There is a way in which we have visual images, superimpositions, types of camera tricks and effects that are implemented and utilized in a way to express this journey, this journey of faith and temptation and salvation of the Sister Martha Ann character and this Cathryn Caviness character. And so these are, I think, indications of the technical craft and thus the a type of representation, if you will, of the power of Spencer Williams and what it is he is able to achieve as a filmmaker, both in front of the camera but also behind the camera. So this is, I think, a really important point to keep in mind, and to tie into the actual subject matter at hand. I think what we can see here with regard to the technical aspects, what is so amazing and remarkable about it is, among many things, is that we have a story which is like a cinematic rendition of a type of spiritual, and a spiritual that has a particular say, motive or a particular goal, that is to show or indicate or otherwise illuminate upon this spiritual journey of this particular character, the Sister Martha Ann character specifically. And so it's using technical aspects of cinema to create the sense of the spiritual journey. And so I think that link between the technical visual aspects and also the audio aspects as well, but the cinematic aspects and the emotional and spiritual aspects of the character that are front and center, I think forms a really strong link between the idea of cinema and the idea of what is being portrayed here, which is the concept or the journey of faith and spiritualism. So this is, I think, a really strong aspect. And also that leads to another very important point that I want to emphasize, which is it also makes a really strong, compelling case for the idea of the blood of Jesus, this film, to be regarded in the context of films about faith. Now, there is this really wonderful discussion, or a series of discussions or viewpoints on cinema, talking about the idea of cinema and its ability to objectively or visually capture or cinematically capture the concept of faith of a particular person or an individual that can otherwise be a very subjective and very personal, highly individualized thing. The idea of belief and faith, and there are many people who discuss this in the context or using examples of cinema. For example, people like Paul Schrader or Martin Scorsese. They speak about certain examples of cinema that they regard as being for them real wonderful and exemplary cinematic works that seem to capture the notion of an individual's sense of faith or belief in God in a religious sense through the magic of cinema. And I think in the context of that discussion, the blood of Jesus fits so well into that. And it forms yet another really strong and palpable and very impactful example of that type of cinema that seems to be able to capture something of the subjective essence that is one's faith or one's belief. Take, for instance, certain scenes we have of, say, the Sister Martha Ann character in this film. She's regarding the image of Jesus Christ on the wall, for instance, or there is a very famous, iconic scene in this film involving her own sense of how she is placed within the context of her, say, religious and spiritual relationship with Jesus Christ. And there are some really vivid scenes and imagery that are employed in the cinematic sense to, I think, convey this. And so the idea here is this film seems to be embodying a sense of faith and belief, which is, I think, a very powerful statement. And that is a further, I think, testament to the fact that we have this strong link between, as I say, the technical achievements of the Spencer Williams cinematic craft that is used to show in these visual terms the faith or belief structure of this particular individual, Sister Martha Ann. So that link, I think, makes for, I think, a really compelling case that this film, The Blood of Jesus, is yet another great example of this perspective in cinema that is dealing with the idea of capturing or otherwise portraying a sense of faith or belief in these cinematic terms. And also, speaking of that, I think another thing that's really fascinating about this film, The Blood of Jesus, is we have a film that is focusing not necessarily on what could be described as a crisis of faith. It is rather a type of, say, celebration or affirmation or reaffirmation of faith. And I think one of the striking things that leads me to this conclusion, for me anyway, is the fact that we have these two characters, Razz Jackson in particular, the Spencer Williams character. He is seen as being somewhat not so devout, and we see this because of his attention or his want or desire to want to go hunting instead of attend the baptism, etc., at the very beginning of the film. And so that seems to be suggesting that maybe he is not so devout as his wife is, or as he otherwise ought to be. And so it might have been one expectation to have, say, the center, the focus being on this particular character. In other words, it could have been a story that would focus on him and his, say, conversion to want to believe or to feel a certain, say, compelling need or emotional resolution or conclusion within him that makes him want to believe or makes him want to affirm or reaffirm notions of faith within him. But in fact, that's not what we get. We get primarily a story of Sister Martha Ann, who is arguably the more devout of the two. And so it is not necessarily her story and her crisis of faith per se, but rather a reaffirmation of the faith structures and how her story also, in a very interesting way, seems to be affecting those people around her, including Razz Jackson. So I find that idea of reaffirmation of faith as a construct or as a cinematic focal point by which this film operates, thus leading to various, say, ripples of consequence that affect the people around her, including her, the Spencer Williams character. I find this approach to be really quite compelling, and thus I think that is, in maybe another way, a further argument to be had that this film is indeed a film that is a wonderful example of the encapsulation in cinematic terms of faith and belief from Spencer Williams and company. So in that way, it echoes so many things and ideas and sparks of interest that lead to further avenues of discussion, I believe. And so I really admire how it's included in this particular set. And Jacqueline Njuma Stewart, in her essay in particular, she makes the argument very convincingly about how this is a film that is, yes, in the context of race cinema, African-American cinema. That is the set in which it is located here. And through that type of social and ethnographic perspective, we get various aspects of the story and context and community that are very much important to the film, both in terms of the plot and also in terms of its production. And at the same time, we get these various elements or echoes, or maybe not just echoes, strong representations of the idea of faith and belief and how that affects the characters overall, well, both individually and also universally. So in that way, it is a very strong film indeed that is also capturing beautiful aspects of technical command of cinema. That is yet another great example of the brilliance and genius of the cinema of Spencer Williams. And so The Blood of Jesus, what a film this is. And the presentation here is stellar. It is a tour de force, and there's so much here within this, as I say, towering achievement of cinema. If you have not seen this film yet, I strongly encourage you to check it out. It is, as I say, it's so important, and it is so worthwhile, and it is so alive, and it is so filled with energy, and also heart and warmth, and the idea of its technical achievements that are connected to the emotional core that is at the heart and center of this amazing work, which is 1941's The Blood of Jesus. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.